Welcome back to another episode of From the Couch Sports. My name is Connor and I am your host. Today I want to get into a kind of a bunch of things. I want to kind of recap some of the UFC event we had Saturday night. And I want to talk about a little bit of NBA news, um, a little bit of college basketball stories. Quite a bit I want to cover today. Just to kind of kick things off, though, we can get into some NBA stuff. Um, couple big things in the NBA. Like right now is All Star Weekend. It's in Cleveland, of all places, to host the event. And specifically, I want to talk about how bad the NBA dunk contest is. It's just not the same product that we used to see when we were growing up. I mean, not even just that. Like just 5 years ago or so, when we had the Aaron Gordon dunk contests. Before that, Dwight Howard had a bunch of great dunk contests. Nate Robinson, Gerald Green, like these, we used to have good dunk contests. Now we're to the point of a dude who wins the dunk contest, who I don't believe he had a 50 score the entire time. The guy that he beat in the final round literally couldn't even make his second dunk, and his first dunk was a normal windmill. I know he was trying to stuff his elbow in the rim, but he didn't. And so it's just like, I mean, literally, LeBron could have came out there and won the dunk contest. It was just a really, really bad dunk contest, like probably the worst of all time. And I don't know exactly how they can go about fixing this, but maybe incentivize the players to come out and win, incentivize big names. Like, people aren't really tuning in to watch the names that were on there. I know like Cole Anthony and Jalen Green are good young names and everything, but like if you had superstar players, if they had a John Morant or some of these more star players, like LeBron, the fact that LeBron's never done one. I know Zion's hurt this year, but Zion not really seeming to be interested in it. It's like, I mean, we literally get better dunk contests at the McDonald's All American game. Like these high school guys put on better dunk contests almost every year in comparison to what we just got from the NBA. It's just, I don't want to see it anymore. You know, All Star Weekend for me in the NBA, it's mixed. There's some events that are fun to watch, some that are just completely garbage. They should just either get rid of it or completely try to revamp it to make it more interesting and entertaining for the fans. But that's just kind of my input on specifically the dunk contest. I want to get into these comments that LeBron was saying recently. He made a few different statements. He kind of he's open to the idea of returning to Cleveland, even he said, for a third time. Which from listening to some of the younger guys like Darius Garland and whatnot, it sounds like they want to establish their own identity in the post LeBron era. I'm sure they don't want to have LeBron come to their team and then trade them all away for one of LeBron's buddies or someone that LeBron thinks is going to help win a ring more. Um, but like most likely he's probably going to leave LA. Like, I mean, he should, right? And I mean, in my opinion, he should. Like, he's still performing at such a high level, and the Lakers are squandering the end of his career. They went out, they got Russell Westbrook, who was a terrible fit to play alongside LeBron. They invested heavily, basically gave up their entire future for Anthony Davis. It paid off for 1 year in the bubble, when they were basically playing in front of no fans. They had the extended time off because of shutdowns, and then they literally got to play inside of a bubble, which I think, in honesty, probably benefited LeBron in his age at this point. But since then, Anthony Davis, he can't stay on the court. When he is on the court, he's phenomenal. But this is not how you extend the end of LeBron's career. This isn't how you get him more rings. It reminds me quite a bit of the Kobe situation when they brought in Dwight Howard, who at this point, I guess you could say he was still in the prime of his career, but it kind of went downhill the moment he went to LA. He started having the back issues, and he was never the same dominant Orlando Magic Dwight Howard. And then at that point they had also had, Steve Nash, who had at least late 30s. I think he was in his early 40s at the point. And none of these dudes could stay on the court with Kobe. And it ruined the end of Kobe's career. You can't win championships banking on guys that were in their prime 5 years ago. And that is all the Lakers have. They've got a few young pieces, but they're not the type of young pieces that you're building a roster around. And like honestly, if LeBron were on Cleveland right now, they do have those young pieces, and they're actually young stud players that they're not, good role players, like some of the players the Lakers have currently. But another interesting kind of quote that came out from LeBron, basically him saying that, whatever team drafts Bronny is the team that LeBron's going to go to. And I feel like this is setting up a few different things. First of all, a father-son duo playing in any city, and the fact that it's LeBron, one of the greatest players of all time, who at the point with playing with Bronny at that point in his career, he'll probably have passed Kareem and, just have shattered records completely. That's going to sell a ton of tickets, ton of jerseys, wherever they go. And honestly, like, we might see a scenario where someone's just willing to draft Bronny based on that. Like, it's LeBron. Like, think about like how long the Knicks have wanted to have LeBron. If the Knicks had a chance to draft Bronny in the first round in order to get LeBron to come to New York, I think they do that in a heartbeat. So it's very interesting to think. I feel like in these situations, pressure can either make someone great, or they can collapse under that pressure. And I think the kid's LeBron's son. He carries the same name as LeBron James Jr. And I think he can be in a position like, maybe he can be really good. I know I've seen a lot of mixed reviews. It's hard to kind of gauge how good people really think he is, and whether or not are they saying that he's this good because he's the son of LeBron, or is he really this good? And then you also hear a lot of critics, and it's like, he's a teenager. I don't know how I feel about critiquing someone who's so young, but at the same time, he is in a very tough situation where it's like you got to try to live up to the LeBron name, and then you have your father saying like his last years in the NBA he wants to play alongside his son, so whatever team drafts him, and it's like is Bronny gonna be like that level of player to like be a lottery pick and have his father go along? I think it's way too soon to tell. I'm curious how things are gonna play out, because in the past, like it's kind of hit or miss as far as how good a great player's kids are. Like Jordan's sons were not good at basketball, and they were kind of just on NBA teams because they were Jordan's sons. And that's happened before with plenty of other NBA players. Even Dwayne Wade's son is like, he was playing on the G League this year, I know. And he for sure wasn't he didn't go in any great colleges or anything like that. And he's clearly not a top level player. So we'll see. Time will tell with LeBron and Bronny. I think it's going to be a fun story. It definitely reminds me of the Ken Griffey story. Him and his father playing alongside for a season. I think that makes for incredible storylines for basketball. And if Bronny is the real deal, we've just seen people talk about LeBron every day for 20 years. You got sports shows that literally make a living completely talking about LeBron. And if Bronny is the real deal, then here we go. We might see 40 straight years of talking about someone named LeBron James. And I think that's interesting. I think it will be fun to kind of see how things progress. I think with the internet age that we're in today, we get to really see some of these players like grow up. You know, you see a lot of high school mixtapes from these guys. Um, you're following NBA mock drafts and everything. You see them in college, and then you see them hit the league, and see some of their careers play out. And like a player of recent, LaMelo Ball, like we saw him play when he was like 14 years old in Chino Hills. So I think that's an interesting thing because there's plenty of highlights and whatnot, game tape for Bronny, and then as his career progresses, it's going to continue to kind of grow in front of our eyes. So we'll see how things go with him. And then kind of moving on to a little bit different of a topic. I want to touch on the Juwan Howard incident. This happened today. Michigan was playing Wisconsin. Wisconsin was up. Not a 20. I don't think it was a 20-point lead. It was 77-63, and Michigan was full court pressing. Wisconsin called a timeout, and Juwan Howard kind of took offense to this. And when they go to handshake after the game, the Wisconsin coach, you could tell Juwan Howard wasn't really interested in shaking hands, but the Wisconsin coach shook his hand and then kind of grabbed him by the side with his left hand. And then this got Juwan Howard fired up. Obviously, I have no clue what was said in these interactions. We can just kind of go off the tape as far as what we saw. But this fired Juwan Howard up. He was pointing his finger in his face. And then, the Wisconsin coach kind of pulled back. And then this is when everybody's kind of in the space. And, Juwan Howard just kind of continued to push forward. Like it looked like kind of a group of, 3 or so Wisconsin coaches. And you saw Juwan Howard throw, what looks like they made it seem like it was a punch, but it was an open hand. Basically a slap to the top of the head of one of the Wisconsin coaches, and then he pulled it back, and he pulled it back as a fist. So they kind of made it out to be like as if he threw a punch because of the way he brought it back. And there's a lot of takes going on the internet right now. I think obviously I don't think I don't think it's in the right for you to hit an opposing coach. I feel like as far as the game goes, like if you're Michigan, don't be down by so much if you're gonna have a problem with the team calling a timeout late in the game, especially if you're still full court pressing, trying to come back into the game. It's Wisconsin's job to try to not to let you, no matter how much time's left on the board, you play to win the game, and you can't be mad at your opponent for beating you. Like, you're going to be mad that you lost the game, but ultimately you control the situation, you control the game, and if you're not in the position to lose the game, then you don't have to be pissed off and then lose it after the game. And I think a lot of people are kind of they're going one way or the other. They're saying Juwan Howard should be fired completely or maybe suspended. And I don't know if this is something necessarily to fire him for. I do remember, when I was younger, there was a situation with, I don't even know when exactly this happened. It could have even been before I was watching. But I do recall the Bob Knight situation. He got a technical like during the middle of a game, and he literally grabbed a chair and just chucked it, like he chucked it onto the court. They threw him out of the game and everything, and I don't believe that he was fired for an instance like that. Obviously they're different situations, but you also don't see like head coaches of college, especially like big college programs, like getting in these situations. So it's it's unfortunate. Like he definitely shouldn't have been thrown, a slap, a punch, whatever you want to call it. I think it's just a slap, but he shouldn't have done it. But I think like, if you want to get your point across, you don't need to fire him. There can be some disciplinary action. Maybe it's a fine, a suspension. I don't know. I don't know what the precedent should be for how long of a suspension he should have. But I think that's fair. You still allow him to coach the team. He's still the coach, and on one hand, like the players probably like that. They probably want to rally with their coach when he's showing that he's not only willing to go to bat for his team, he's willing to fight other coaches for his team. So if I'm a player, I respect the hell out of my coach for that. I don't want him to get fired over a situation like that. You might not want to see it, but also I don't think it's justified to fire him over it. I think give him a proper suspension. Whatever the fair amount of games is, and then let him continue to coach. And let's kind of see. I know he hasn't been there for too long, but I want to see. I have heard that some say that this isn't like his first incident. It's basically it's his first incident like striking someone. But give him a punishment, but outright firing someone for a mistake, I think you got to give him another chance. But that's just my take on the Juwan Howard situation. I want to move on to another, maybe a little bit controversial topic. This is another college situation, and it's not even really a I don't cover a lot of this sport. It's a the swimmer topic. I wanted to get my thoughts out there on it. I think I think the world's in a tough spot right now. World's in a tough spot when we allow what's comedy become our reality. And I remember as a kid watching I remember watching this movie called Juwan Man. And essentially the movie's about an NBA player who is suspended from the NBA, and he goes and he plays in the WNBA. And he goes in the WNBA and he just straight dominates. And he goes and he dresses up as a girl. He calls himself Juwan Man. And it's just a super funny movie. And I want to say this is like an early 2000s movie. And it's just jokes. And then a couple years ago, even when some of this nonsense started coming into the world, South Park they mocked it as well. They had I can't remember the exact name of the wrestler, but basically they had a WWE wrestler go out and do like the weight challenges against women, basically saying that he's a woman. And it's like it's disturbing, honestly. Like you're setting a very tough precedent for the future of women's sports. The world that we set right now is going to be the world for our kids and our kids' futures. And even going so far as to say that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy. We're leaving a scary precedent for these kids growing up. I'm not a father of girls. If I did have daughters, I think this would be even more disturbing. But we set an interesting precedent for our kids and our kids' futures if we allow men go and perform in women's sports, especially at high levels. Recently we've had the women, the transgender, the man become a woman and go and fight in mixed martial arts. And a man is so much stronger than a woman that you could have a girl that's super technical, really good jiu-jitsu, and the man can just literally outmuscle her because he's a man. And whether or not they've changed anything, cut their parts off, whatever you call it, they're still a man. They were born a man. They grew up as a man, and instinctually in their DNA, they're physically stronger and more gifted. If you've never played sports against women, I guess you don't know. But like anybody who has good parents taught you, when you're growing up, don't go all out on a girl. I used to play in the Boys and Girls Club. growing up playing basketball, and it's like you're not gonna push around a girl or anything. Play your hardest on a girl. You take it easy on a girl. Um, and that's it's basically like I grew up like that, and these dudes didn't. Apparently these dudes thought, if I'm not good enough to play a man's sport, I can't beat men in this sport. I'm gonna go and pretend that I'm a woman, and I'm gonna go beat women, and I'm gonna go dominate the women. I don't even want to say this guy's name, but basically he was a college swimmer in men's for a few years, and he was not good, and then he transitioned to a female, and then he's literally been dominating. I believe in 3 events he set 5 records. Including in, I know one of the events there was a female who had also beat the record. I think it was the Ivy League record. The female beat the record, but she got second place. So he takes the headlines, and it's just like, are we gonna allow men to ruin women's sports? Can you imagine a Juwan Man situation? Maybe not even a true NBA player. Maybe a college player that just not quite good enough to make the NBA. Maybe he's like a fringe G League player. Just decides, I'm a woman now. I'm gonna go play in the WNBA, a league where the best the best players are not that physically gifted. Like rarely ever dunk. When they do dunk, it's a rim grazer dunk. Can you imagine if a good level athlete, college basketball player, went and played in the WNBA? He put 50 up a game. So imagine someone who's able to do a windmill dunk, tomahawks, and just it would be outrageous. And that's where we're going. We're not going to a point where the transgender men are playing in men's sports. It's the men becoming females, that are playing in female sports because they were men originally. And if that doesn't piss you off, I don't know what's wrong with you. You can have whatever your opinion is on what you do in your personal time, who you spend your time with. Do you? I'm not here to critique that. That's between you and God. But for me, it crosses the line when you bring this into other people's reality. You got females that have played their whole lives, committed to sports, and they're getting their livelihood, they're getting their lives ruined. Like, can you imagine your daughter? She's 21. Let's say she's 20. She worked her whole life, dedicated to swimming. You took her to the swim meets every week. She spent hours upon hours dedicating her life to setting the Ivy League record, and a dude comes in who wasn't good enough to swim against men, comes in and dominates. It doesn't even look like the same sport. It looks like a Michael Phelps swimming against amateur swimmers or something like that. It's pathetic that anybody even entertained the idea of this. And a lot of people want to make like the argument, I think it was the Australian weightlifter thing. He had like a 40-year-old man who tried to be in the weightlifting against women, and he failed miserably in the Olympics. But it's even at that, like, he failed, but like a lot of men wouldn't fail, and it's getting to scary times. I think we as people need to rise up and not allow this stuff in women's sports. If people truly if we truly were equal, men and women, athletically gifted wise, we wouldn't have men's and women's sports. There would be no division. All the WNBA players, the best ones, would play in the NBA. But we've never had that opportunity. There's never been a WNBA player so good that she could play in the NBA. That's just not how real life works. And just because people want to make these people happy with whatever's going on in their head, it doesn't make it okay for you to ruin other people's lives and other people who have worked their way to get to where they are. it's swimming today. It was MMA. Sometime we had an MMA thing a few months ago. We could get a dude who played baseball in the semi pros. What if he goes and plays softball, or it things can only get worse. I mean, I guess the semi pro situation wouldn't work. But like high school dude who's a star baseball player goes plays college softball. Just imagine how much better he would be hitting the bigger ball, um, against people who aren't throwing the ball near as fast as some of the pitchers he's used to. It's just we're in scary times if we allow this to happen. We need to make a stand. I know it's kind of a controversial topic. I'm not discussing anybody's rights or what you want to do behind closed doors. But I am specifically saying, like, this is not okay. This should not be allowed in female sports. If you want to have a situation like the girl go kick it in a college football game, I'm all okay for that. If a girl truly is good enough, if there is ever a girl who's so good in the WNBA that she could be good enough to be on an NBA roster, I'm all for it. But allowing men who weren't good enough to play against men to dominate women it's an embarrassment to sports. Anybody knows that anybody that's played against females before in any kind of sports should understand the point I'm getting at. I mean, you could take a very good high school team and they would destroy a WNBA team. It's just how men are better athletes. It's how God made us. But that's just my take on the situation. As controversial as it may be, but kind of moving past that, I know it's a big topic. I do wanna talk about some UFC that we just had this weekend. UFC Vegas 48. I watched this whole card. Ton of good fights. As I said before, a lot of the cards that we hear about and the media or whoever you may see says is a bad card, they tend to be really good cards. Even if you're not, I think this fight only had 2 guys on it that were ranked. The rest of the guys were younger or older vets who aren't ranked anymore. But it was still a super fun card. A lot of really good fights, a lot of finishes. We'll kind of go through my favorite fights on the card. Kind of starting in the prelims, David Onama. This is a guy who he's barely making his second UFC fight. He fought his first fight against Mason Jones, but this was like a short notice call up at 155. He's more of a natural 145er. That's the division he's most used to. He comes in. He fights Gabriel Benitez. Gabriel is a guy who's fought a whole lot of more fights. He's been experienced. He's been in there with a lot of guys. And he hit him. He landed on Onama really hard in the first round. Onama was like grabbing his eye. He thought he had an eye poke, but it looked like he landed a perfect shot, kind of to the eye. But Onama was able to kind of wrestle, able to get his bearings back right. And then when he was finally able to do that, he started pushing the pace, and he started throwing shots, and he was able to land a double-digit combo to finish the fight. It was a ton of fun to watch. He's going to be an interesting prospect going forward. He's still young, and his fight career is still, he hasn't fought a whole ton yet, and he's early in the UFC, so I'm curious to see what's next for him. It was a ton of fun to watch his fight on Saturday. And then moving to another undercard fight, Chaz Skelly. This was kind of his, from what he said, this was his last fight. He fought Mark Striegel, and he said it was his retirement fight, but it was a ton of fun to watch. Skelly was, you could tell he was the better grappler, but then he was opening up shots on the feet too. That's just something that the grappling does sometimes for these guys. He landed a big elbow and he followed it up with a knee to the chin that it landed perfectly and dropped dropped Striegel, and he finished the win. And if he is retiring, what better way to go out than get a finish in your last MMA fight? You see a lot of guys who fight to the point of getting consecutive losses, and then it's like they keep getting more and more fights because they want to come back and get a win, and then the UFC throws them against some guy who's 25 and has 2 losses on his career or something, and then they get knocked out again. And so, not to say that that's what would have happened to Skelly, but to see a guy also go out kind of on his own terms, retire off a big win, I think that's always fun to see. So those are kind of my two favorites from the prelims. And then kicking off the main card, we had Joaquin Buckley, and he was going against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. This was a really fun fight. Abdul clearly had the advantage on the power, even though Joaquin Buckley has crazy power himself. But you could tell that Buckley was reserved. He didn't want to go into a firefight and risk getting caught. So he utilized a lot of wrestling, double legs, and takedowns in the first couple rounds, and you could tell it gassed Abdul out by the second round. And then the third round came and it flipped, and Buckley was clearly gassed, and Buckley was able to get taken down and kind of controlled on the ground. And at one point it looked like he might have been in trouble, but Abdul was for sure able to take that third round. But Buckley, he won the fight regardless. It was really fun to watch. He had the Dust guy, the Detroit Urban Survival trainer, in his corner, so that was really fun. And then they asked him about it afterwards, and he did still have his main head coach in the corner, but he brought this guy in, and he said, the UFC wasn't doing a good enough job promoting my fight, so I brought him in. And then we saw guys like Snoop Dogg and DJ Khaled talking about it, and I think that's brilliant. If you got an opportunity to, especially if you're not like the main event, if you got an opportunity to bring someone into your corner that's gonna draw attention to you, people are gonna watch you fight for that reason, and then you got an opportunity to just gain more fans, like tons more people tuned in for that fight. They tune in for that fight. They know that he's got the Dust guy in the corner. They know he had the best knockout of 2020. And so it's doing those kind of things, that's how you get a bigger fan base. And I really liked the move for Buckley. And he was able to capitalize and pull off the win as well. And then kind of moving to the next fight. So this was Jim Miller versus Nicholas Mota. Mota, I believe it is. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation. But basically Miller, he goes, I feel like he's done this a lot recently, where earlier on in the fight, he'll get clipped. And in this one, he got rocked, but he didn't drop fully. He just kind of stumbled back and then, regained his balance and just straight pressed forward the rest of the fight. He was landing big leg kicks, and it was opening up his left. And then he was able to land a nice right hook in the second round that just straight dropped him. And he finished his fight like that. And, Jim Miller, I believe that was a tie for the most wins in UFC history with Cowboy. And it's also two finishes in a row for him. So I'm really curious what's next for him. He's continuing to put on great fights, always fun to watch. And then for Mota in his first UFC fight, he hadn't fought since he won a contender spot in 2020. This was his debut. He fighting the guy with that much experience, like a decade more experience in MMA. I know that's got to be hard, especially a guy that's been in the UFC for so long, he's tested and he's seen it all, been through it all. So I definitely want to see Nick fight again, see kind of what his next fight looks like, and he's still really young and everything. So it's definitely a tough fight for your first fight, and that's kind of the way the UFC makes things. They make the best fighters in the world fight the best fighters in the world. So they don't really give any older vets breaks, they always got to fight the young up and comers, and then the same for the young guys. And then, moving past that fight, Parker Porter fought Alan Bodeau, and this was a fun fight. Porter used a lot of wrestling. You could tell Bodeau had the length and everything, and he could be trouble on the feet. But Porter was able to utilize his wrestling, and not necessarily like dominate in a wrestling sense, but in the clinch and kind of push the pace of the fight. So Porter kind of won the first couple rounds in my opinion, but at the very end of the second round, Bordeaux landed a big shot that made Porter bleed out of his nose. And then at the kind of the beginning of the third round, Porter was kind of getting pieced up from distance, but then he was able to turn things around and get a takedown and finish the fight on top in the last 2 minutes. So he was able to pull away with the win. Um, you know, I think watching heavyweights is always fun to me. Usually you got, maybe not necessarily in this fight, although Bordeaux has a lot of big finishes, but you got guys that are so big they can finish each other at any minute. And then just kind of watching, I think this one had a decent pace for heavyweights. So I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. And then we had Kyle Dawkins. He came in against Jamie Pickett. This was a short notice fight for Jamie Pickett. I know Julian Marquez was supposed to fight, but he had to pull out. So Pickett comes in, they fight at catch weight. But Dawkins he looked awesome the whole fight. He was getting takedown after takedown. Pickett was able to get up the first couple times, and then he was able to secure Darce towards the end of the round, and like you hear the 10-second bell ring, or the 10-second bell, and then everyone's just like, Pickett, you just gotta last a few more seconds, dude. It doesn't look like you're about to be choked unconscious or anything. And he literally taps like 1-2 times, maybe just once, and then immediately after the bell ends, the round's over. So he tapped like a second early. If he would have held on 1 extra second, he would have made it to round 2, and we would have seen if he could do anything different. But Dawkins controlled the whole fight from start to finish. And then Pickett had said after the fight that he had his tongue like underneath his mouth guard, so he was concerned that he was gonna like literally bite his tongue off. Which, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that can be very concerning. It's tough to lose when you come in on short notice and everything, but we'll see Pickett bounce back. He'll get a full camp next time, and we'll get to see him with a little bit more preparation. So I'm excited to see that. And then the main event of the evening, Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker. This was a fun fight. I kind of said before, like, I think this is Hill's fight to win, as long as Walker can't land anything crazy. And Walker clearly had the reach advantage. He's got the distance. He's got crazy power. Like, his kicks that were blocked, like, you could tell they left a big swollen, I think you call it a hematoma on Jamal Hill's arm. But Hill in the first part of the fight, he was having trouble getting through with the left, just on the distance. And Johnny Walker was throwing a lot of high kicks, and he was mixing it up, looking good until he wasn't. Then literally Jamal Hill switched stances. I think it was the first time he did it the whole fight. And like his first shot, huge right hand. Crazy the amount of power and what it did to Johnny Walker, because it doesn't look like he's like landing perfectly clean, but it looks like he hits the temple. And basically he lands this right hand, he hits him like not straight on, like it even went past him kind of, and Johnny Walker like went stiff as a board and then fell straight back. And when he lands on the ground, he's still conscious. And Jamal Hill comes in, left hand, right hand, straight down at the chin, and then follows it through with a shoulder. And at that point, Johnny Walker was just out cold completely. Jamal Hill's the real deal. That's all there is to it. He's cracking the top 10 with this win. If he continues to get exciting wins like this, he could be a couple fights away from the belt. Let's say he fights someone in the top 7 next time. I hear a lot of people say maybe Dominic Reyes comes back and fights him. We'll see. I think there's a ton of interesting matchups for Hill. If he gets a big win in his next fight, he's already main evented. If he gets another big win, he's fighting someone in the top 5, and then he's in the title picture. And I don't want to talk too soon about it because obviously we got to see a couple more fights, but he very well could be fighting for the belt at the end of this year, early next year. And a matchup I want to see is Hill versus Yuri. I think Hill's boxing versus Yuri's striking style would be very fun to watch. I'd be curious if Yuri can deal with the power. The thing about Yuri is he's going to continue to push. He's going to keep throwing. He fights at a crazy pace. But even in the Reyes fight, he got caught a couple times. Not hurt more than he was hurt in Reyes, but if you fight Jamal Hill, a guy who can shut your lights out with some of those same punches, I think Hill has more weapons boxing-wise than Reyes. Reyes has the big left, but Hill's got he literally just showed it last night. He's got the power in both hands. So to see a fight like that, I think would be a ton of fun to watch. Obviously, we know Yuri's going to fight Glover for the belt. Whether he wins or not, I want to see this fight eventually down the line. I think it would be fun to watch. And then, I do want to kind of talk a little bit about Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is a super fun guy to watch. He's 6'6", crazy good athlete. He's a guy who's talked about fighting light heavyweight and heavyweight, in the future. But he's in a weird spot because if he jumps up to heavyweight, he's going to be fighting guys that are 260. So he might have the height and the reach and everything on some of those guys. But he's going to be fighting guys way bigger, weight-wise, that have crazy knockout power. Walker's getting knocked out a decent amount at light heavyweight. I do think that he should move on from SBG. I don't want to be too critical, but from what I've seen about SBG is you got Conor McGregor who comes in and he is an all-time great. He helped change the sport of MMA. But outside of him, they haven't really. It's not like they're breeding champions over there. Johnny Walker, he hasn't had any kind of improvements. He's lost most of his fights since going to SBG. And then a main thing I saw, Johnny Walker posted a video, talking about his loss. It was just a quick video, kind of him saying I'm all right. I don't even remember it or whatever. And Kavanaugh in the background literally pulls up bottle of Proper 12. Give McGregor a plug on that. In front of your fighter who just lost. Like, dude, I don't think that's in good taste. I know I've been hearing people say for years McGregor should have left SBG. Like, what would McGregor be looking like if he had been fighting against, like, with one of these top gyms? Like in Florida or with Whitman, and it's very interesting. And like outside of Johnny Walker, I don't even know like if there's any other big names in the UFC outside of McGregor that still train at SBG. And we've seen McGregor's career has not gotten better. He peaked in like 2015. He peaked when he beat Alvarez. He never defended a single belt, not the 145, not the 155. He did the Nate fight. He goes and fights Floyd. Like, who's to blame him? Anybody with a chance to make $100 million is going to do it. And then he comes back. He loses to Habib. At this point, losing to Habib, you could tell like this dude. One, he showed up to the press conference drunk as hell, and then you can just tell it's not the same motivated guy who's talking about how he's grown. He's coming up on welfare, and working as a plumber or whatever it was in Ireland. It's not that same hungry mystic Mac or whatever you call it, and he's never been the same since. He had a moment of it against Cowboy. Cowboy fighting on. He got the main event against Cowboy. Like, Cowboy's been towards the end of his career. He's not exactly been knocking dudes out. He's not in the prime of his career by any means. And McGregor had that moment, and then, since then he did fight, one of the best fighters in the world. Don't get me wrong, Poirier's that dude. But in both of those fights, he got dominated. And then, just some of the antics that McGregor's done, the legal trouble, you can tell he's got substance issues. I don't want to place exactly what it's on, but you can tell he's got issues with alcohol. He literally, he's the founder of Proper 12. I know I think he's got like a dark beer or something like that too that he's been selling Black Forge in. And so he's clearly an alcoholic, maybe doing other stuff. He's so tied up in how rich he is, talking about his yachts and nonsense, that he's not the same. And when he does fight, it's clear he's fighting for the passion in the game. He doesn't need the money anymore. But it's also like, if like I think he had an opportunity to be, bigger than he even is, bigger than he was. And, some of the things he's been doing lately, talking the way that he did to Poirier's wife and things like that, it's not exactly getting new fans, and you're kind of just hurting your own career at this point. But that's just my thoughts on all the UFC stuff. Let me know what you guys think about some of the topics that we discussed. I know some of them were a little bit controversial, but this sports show, From the Couch Sports, I'm a fan of sports. I sit on my couch and watch sports. How do you watch sports? I think a lot of people can relate to me. I'm not a former pro athlete. I didn't play college ball, nothing like that. I'm just a passionate fan about sports, and if you like the content, please like and subscribe the video. Tune in for more. Let me know some feedback. What's your takes on some of the subjects we talked about? But as always, thanks for tuning in.